We will be recording this. We will be recording today. Did you guys get a notification? Yes, it's recording. I got it. Okay. So just on behalf of AFSP, thank you so much for being here today for South Dakota State Capitol Day. So we will get it started. I'm Sam. I'm the Dakota's Area Director for the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. Co-presenting with me today, we have a wonderful board member, Kirsten. She will be co-presenting. She's also a AFSP volunteer, an AFSP South Dakota board member, as well as she has been helping plan state capitol days, whether they were virtual or in person, since our first state capitol day event. So you're going to hear a lot from Kirsten. As well as we do have Chelsea Dumont. I wrote down your title, Chelsea, so I didn't get it wrong. Chelsea Dumont is the Senior Manager of Public Policy Events and Projects at AFSP National. So we will have a full presentation for you today. We'll talk about what we our goals, and then we will also have Q&A, and hopefully, Chelsea, if we have any questions, you can also help us with those as well. So we will get into it. And again, this is being recorded, so we will be having participants from Facebook as well. All right, so we are going to learn a lot today. Here is an overview of our agenda for today. We will have some opening remarks, provide you with an introduction to advocacy with the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, give a brief overview of Advocacy 101 for those who might be new to advocacy. We will then highlight some suicide facts and figures for our state of South Dakota, as well as we'll talk about the national statistics. We'll talk about policy priorities that we'll be promoting as part of this event before reviewing the ways that we can take action, and finally answer any questions that you might have. Also, I want to note I'm going to stop my video just because I think I'm a little distracting, but I am here in real time and I'm really excited to have you here with us today. So moving forward, we are going to jump right into it with our introduction to AFSP advocacy. So first, we're going to talk a little bit about the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention volunteer field advocates make an impact in many different policy areas for suicide prevention and mental health. Policy priorities are determined every 2 years by volunteers on the National AFSP Public Policy Council and the Public Policy Office staff, which is in Washington, D.C. Staff work with chapters to really determine which policies will make the biggest impact for each state. Visit afsp.org/priorities. Again, that's afsp.org/priorities to find more detailed information on our top policy issues. There you can also view and download our full list of policy priorities for the next 2 years and our synopsis on public policy. So we're going to start with a short video that highlights the impact that thousands of AFSP advocates across the country are making by being a part of AFSP State Capitol Day event.
Each spring, AFSP volunteer field advocates storm state capitol buildings across the country. They raise their voices in support of suicide prevention policies that can save lives. State Capitol Day events allow advocates to meet with legislators, share their stories, provide resources, connect with the community, and save future lives. AFSP advocates are making an impact across the country, sharing one message: suicide is preventable. By creating connections with public officials, AFSP advocates raise the volume of protections for the LGBTQ community. Resources, training, and policies for K-12 schools and higher education. training and programming for veterans, first responders, and healthcare professionals. Mental health parity, and state suicide prevention plans and initiatives. Join the thousands of AFSP volunteer advocates across the country who are bringing hope and saving lives through advocacy. Together, we are changing the landscape of mental health and suicide prevention. Visit afsp.org/advocacy for more information and to sign up as an AFSP volunteer field advocate today.
Thank you for watching that clip with us today. Now, Kirsten's going to talk to us a little bit more about Advocacy 101. Take it away, Kirsten.
Sam. I'm not sure if I should turn myself off too, because I have a ton of notes and you'll see me flipping, but maybe that's okay. I get really excited, so I need notes. We'll just go with this. So Advocacy 101, speaking out about suicide. Really important to make sure you're in a safe place in your recovery, just because we want ourselves and all our advocates to be well. Avoiding details about the method. It can be triggering for those people around you. And also, like, avoid glorifying suicide by using the terms like successful attempt. Instead, say something like death by suicide. Avoid using the word commit, because we often relate the word commit to a crime. Instead, say somebody died by suicide or took their own life. Share mental health resources, like the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. We'll talk about that a little bit more, or the crisis text line. And when you're telling your story, just practice and practice, because the first time or 2 or 10, it can be a little intimidating, because a lot of us are here because we have personal stories, but ultimately that's what's going to engage our audience. So, okay, so yeah, if we do this safely with these tips, then we're going to encourage people at risk to seek help, as long as spread the message as far as advocacy. Okay, so the South Dakota legislature, we've done the state capitol day in person a couple times, but you know, COVID and everything, this year it's all virtual, but we have the link right there. You'll see the sdlegislature.gov at the bottom there. And so as you begin your advocacy journey, it is important to know what resources you have at your disposal in your state. State legislators' websites offer several resources to advocates. You can identify your legislator and their contact information. You can search for legislation that has been introduced in the current legislative sessions and find laws that have been enacted in our state. Each advocate is also encouraged to sign up for newsletters to find out about relevant events and advocacy opportunities may be coming up within their state legislatures. Okay, so AFSP resources, we have a ton. Let's see, so we offer several resources to new and seasoned advocates. If you're interested in learning more about the specific policy areas that AFSP works on, or both the federal and state level, you can visit afsp.org/advocacy to download the 2021-2022 federal and state public policy synopsis. You can download policy-specific issue briefs at afsp.org/priorities. You'll see those on the slide there too. The Public Policy Office has also hosted and shared webinars and sample meeting videos for new advocates that are available at afsp.org/advocacy resources. That's on the screen again too. Sam, I don't know for sure, we didn't talk. Is this something that can be shared? These
Yes, we will have those at the end. We will have it in chat, as well as with the follow-up email. We'll have all of these linked as well.
Okay,
Great question.
Thank you for your clarification. Let's see. You can also visit the AFSP Action Center at any time to see what legislation AFSP supports and where bills are in the legislative process. We'll highlight the Action Center later on in today's presentation and how you can utilize it to support our policy priorities. Okay, so connecting with lawmakers, three key steps. Introduce yourself and share your connection to the cause. Offer to be a resource, follow through on this promise. If you don't know the answer to the question, that's okay. Utilize your AFSP chapter and public policy office as a resource. And I'll go a little more into detail on this. So speaking to a legislator or their staff, remember to be polite and thank them for their time. And be mindful of the language that you use, as discussed, just a minute ago. Then share your connection to the cause, offer to be a resource, and include a policy ask. Remember to be brief. Think of this as like an elevator speech. So like, for example, I might say, I'd introduce myself to a legislator. I'd say, my name's Kirsten. I'm one of your constituents in this area. I'd let them know how I was impacted by suicide. I would give a little brief, growing up in Pierre, we had the highest suicide rate per capita. I lost a lot of friends, have had some struggles with mental health, and now I'm on the other side helping people. And just kind of share your story briefly without any real in-depth details. And then offer to share more information about how they can help and how we can work together to prevent suicide, and offer to answer any questions. And again, if you don't know the answer, just say, let me take down your information, I'll get back to you. So I think that is pretty much it for that slide. But I think, offering to take down their information and get back to you is a great way to keep their information and to keep those relationships going and build them. So, okay. Let's see, becoming a resource. Okay, building relationships year-round with lawmakers by sending emails, engaging in social media, making one-on-one visits virtually with local or capital office, attending a town hall or committee meeting, and subscribing to legislator newsletters, testifying at hearings, which can be done written or verbally. Let's see, and now to my notes. Let's see, we shared some ways to build the relationships. And as a volunteer field advocate with the AFSP, you'll receive emails, which you're probably getting from the AFSP public policy team, that will prompt you to email your members of Congress and state legislators through the AFSP Action Center. You can also meet with legislators or their staff throughout the year in person or virtually. The AFSP public policy team is happy to work with any advocate on talking points for meetings. In addition, you can find out what your legislators are doing locally to support suicide prevention and mental health by signing up for newsletters and following them on social media, so you know when they are hosting events in your area. Many town halls and legislative meetings are still being held virtually and offer increased opportunities for advocates to become engaged in the legislative process.
All right. Thank you so much for that great information, Kirsten. Thank you so much. We are going to move on, and we are going to talk about suicide facts and figures. Statistics are really helpful. They're really important because they help people see the scope of the problem of suicide. The Center for Disease Control and Prevention, also called the CDC, they collect and share data on the number of suicide deaths in the United States each year. It typically takes about 2 years for this data to be published. So the most recent data available that you see here is from 2020. Suicide is the 12th leading cause of death in the United States. In 2020, we lost 45,979 Americans to suicide, making it the second leading cause of death for our young people ages 25 to 34, and the fourth leading cause of death for ages 35 to 44. Over a third of those who died by suicide were over the age of 55. It's estimated that for each suicide death, there are 25 attempts, which works out to be more than 1 million Americans each year who attempt suicide. This is part of the AFSP National Fact Sheet that is available at afsp.org/statistics. Again, that's afsp.org/statistics. What you're seeing is a comparison of the suicide rates across the country. You can see that South Dakota is in the top third of suicide rates in the United States. It's important to remember that even for states in the lower third of suicide rates, there is still more work that needs to be done. Locally in South Dakota, suicide is the 10th leading cause of death overall. For our young people, ages 10 to 34, suicide is the second leading cause of death, and suicide is the fourth leading cause of death for those ages 35 to 44. All right, now that we have some statistics, we are going to switch gears a little bit, and we are going to talk about the items that were outlined in our issue brief. The issue brief was emailed out to you. Please look on the front side and the back side. The first one that we are going to talk about is 988 implementation and crisis response. And then we're also going to talk about infrastructure to support the state suicide prevention plan. So we are going to review the issue briefs. Again, this was emailed to you yesterday and this morning. This is also what we call our asks when we're in our legislative meetings. So we're going to go over those with you right now in a little bit more depth. And again, if you have any questions, we'll take those questions at the end, and we'll make sure that everyone is feeling comfortable and confident. All right, Kirsten, if you can take it away and cover our first information on 988.
Okay, so I have the email you sent in front of me here, but I'll just kind of go through the slides. The 988 implementation and crisis response. What we want to do is support future legislative efforts to provide sustainable funding for 988 services in South Dakota. Another thing we want to do is dedicate ongoing state general funds to support the Helpline Center and the future 988 system. Let's see, I don't know, do we want to review the 988 system or just kind of move forward? Okay.
Kirsten, thank you. Thank you so much. If we can move forward, I think we'll review if they have any questions at the end. But thank you so much for making sure we're on top of everything. This is wonderful.
I get so excited and I want everyone to know what's in my head. And yeah. Okay, so we'll move forward to crisis lines. There's the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. It's a national network of state and local crisis centers linked through a 24/7 toll-free number, which right now it's 1-800-273-TALK or 1-800-273-8255, and it connects callers throughout the U.S. to immediate crisis care. Callers are connected with a call center in their own state. If the local center is unable to answer, the Lifeline reroutes calls to one of 9 backup centers in their network, which may be in or out of state from the caller. Okay, statewide crisis lines help to ensure that gaps in local services and delivery areas are served and that calls are answered 24/7 by individuals trained to handle suicide risk and other mental health crises. Although the Lifeline has proven itself to be essential and necessary component of the suicide prevention and mental health care system, the network of crisis centers consistently faces 2 main interconnected barriers to its effectiveness and success. Insufficient funding is one, and capacity to respond with increasing call volume is another. And one thing we're kind of anticipating when it goes to 988 is an even higher volume of calls. People, will have that number easier in their head, 988, other than the 1-800 number, and it's possible that our calls are going to increase. So let's see. So while the while the Lifeline is a national program, federal funding goes towards managing call routing, best practice standards, public messaging, and technical assistance. Local centers are reliant on funding from state and local contributors to operate and grow their centers to meet call volume. Many rely on private contributions and volunteers to keep their centers running. It is critical for state governments to provide funding to crisis call centers within the Lifeline network to make sure calls are answered in state. Okay, in October 2020, the National Suicide Hotline Designated Act became law. This legislation designated 988 as the future 3-digit phone number for the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. This requires full implementation and access of 988 by July 2022, which is coming up fast. It also empowers states to enact laws allowing 988 to be funded the same way as 911 through monthly customer service fees. Okay, timely access to mental health and crisis services can absolutely save lives. AFSP urges every state to pass legislation enacting a customer service fee for 988. Funding would ensure call centers have the capacity to answer increased call volume. Callers can be connected 24/7 with center in their own state. Call centers are equipped with resources to connect callers with wraparound services and care. And this next slide, it gives us a lot of great resources, such as the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, which we talked about, crisis text line, also really great. People trained crisis counselors there 24/7, no cost. Trevor Lifeline, Trevor Chat, Trans Lifeline, and the Sage LGBT Elder Hotline. And that's not an expansive list. There are more. So, all right, Sam, looks like back to you.
Kirsten, thank you so much for sharing that great information with us. So that was the issue brief that we emailed out to you. That was kind of the front side, our priority number 1. Now we're going to go over our priority number 2, which is, if you're looking at the issue brief, you're going to flip it over and it's going to be on the back side of the document. So really what we're trying to do is support infrastructure to support suicide prevention. We want to support the infrastructure that's really necessary to fully implement the 2019 South Dakota Suicide Prevention Plan. The plan is to run from 2020 to 2025. The Suicide Prevention Resource Center has developed state suicide prevention infrastructure recommendations, and you can actually visit that at that website there on the screen. That's sprc.org/state/infrastructure that outlines essential elements of a state infrastructure for suicide prevention. The recommendation provide a framework for a public health approach to suicide prevention, encourages states to regularly examine the current extent of suicidal behavior, evidence-based efforts, funding, and personnel needed to identify and address needs. Again, we do encourage you to visit the website. Again, that's on the slide for related tools and resources, including a guide developed by AFSP to discuss and really address state suicide prevention infrastructure with your lawmakers. And this is, I think it's a really great infographic, excuse me, to kind of explain what we're trying to do here. The recommendations can help state leaders, 1, assess current suicide prevention efforts, identify gaps and needed resources, and also helps to identify and engage public and private partners. So again, this infographic, I think, does a really nice job of kind of sharing our goals here. So the state prevention plans and programs. The 2021 outcome report from South Dakota highlights progress made in the priority areas of data, education and training, communication, and of course, community engagement. Also, we do want to share some of the highlights. 65 evidence-based mental health and suicide prevention trainings were offered in 2021, resulting in over 1,442 individuals being trained. 3,239 educators submitted completion of an approved youth suicide awareness and prevention training as part of a requirement to obtain initial or renewal educator certification. So again, to sum up some suicide prevention plans and programs, the South Dakota legislator must continue to make investments in statewide suicide prevention programming and infrastructure as we continue to work to reduce suicide rates across South Dakota and sustain progress. We ask the legislator to continue to support South Dakota suicide prevention and the state agencies working to support those efforts to ensure sustainable impact. All right. Thank you for, again, that information hopefully summed up the issue brief in a little bit more detail. Again, if you have questions, that's completely okay. I have lots of questions all of the time. We'll take those questions at the end of this presentation, so everyone is feeling comfortable and confident when they're making their ask. So we will switch gears, and Kirsten's going to help us talk about action items.
Okay. So for the action items, we'll now discuss how you can take action to support the policy priorities we reviewed during the presentation today. All right, take action this week. Email your legislators via the AFSP Action Center. The link is there. Meet with your legislators. That could be in person, over the phone, over Zoom, something like that. Share your connection to the cause through a vignette. Sam, did we have an example, did you say, or not right now?
Yep, and an example of vignette will be in a few slides, as well as I will send you a template when I follow up with this email. So don't worry about that. We'll have a great example for you.
Okay, I will not go into detail with my explanation then. Thank you. Let's see, engage your community by recruiting other advocates. Promote suicide prevention on social media, tagging AFSP National and AFSP, as well as your legislators. Every advocate has received an email from the AFSP Public Policy Office prompting you to visit the AFSP Action Center to email your legislators in support of the policies discussed today. For those looking to take additional action, you may share a personal vignette before or after your legislative meeting that we will review shortly. At any time, you can promote suicide prevention and positive mental health on social media, tagging your legislators and AFSP. Okay, so let's see, emailing your legislators. The Public Policy Office has set up an action on the AFSP Action Center for today's event. Advocates are directed to the AFSP Action Center at the link you see here. There, you can email your legislators in as little as 2.5 minutes. The Action Center is pre-programmed with letters to elected officials, which are then populated with your contact information and any personalization you wish to add. And don't forget, you can also share the general link to the AFSP Action Center that you see there on the screen and on your social media outlets, and encourage your friends and family and communities to take action today. The action will remain up for 1 week after today's event. Okay, so meeting with the legislators. For those meeting with the legislator and or their staff, there are a few things to keep in mind. First, practice your elevator speech as we discussed prior, and make sure that you feel comfortable with sharing your story. So again, practice in a mirror to a friend until you get comfortable. One easy way to practice is by filling out a written vignette that can be shared with a legislative office. The vignette includes a photo of you or your loved ones and a few sentences about why suicide prevention is important to you. Typically, the legislative meetings run about 10 to 15 minutes, so you may not have time to talk about every priority discussed today. This is why we encourage advocates to select one area from the issue brief that they are passionate about and talk about that during your meeting. Legislators have received an electronic copy of the issue brief and state fact sheet from the Public Policy Office. So if you're not able to talk about each priority, that is okay. Finally, don't worry if you receive a question that you don't know the answer to. Simply say you don't know. You'll be happy to find the answer and for them and follow up. And again, this gives you an opportunity to stay in communication with the office and build your relationship. The Public Policy Office is happy to work with all advocates to help answer these questions so you can follow through on your promise to be a resource for your legislators. Okay, then after your meeting, send a thank you email and include your vignette. Share details of upcoming chapter events offered to be a resource. Okay, that's what I was looking for. Okay, and that is Anna, and she is on today. And huge shout out to Anna. She has been amazing with the AFSP and the public policies. Thanks, Anna. So after meeting with the legislative office, it is important to follow up and offer yourself and the chapter as future resource. You should send a personalized thank you note and a copy of your vignette if it was not shared prior to the meeting. The vignette provides a legislator and their staff with a name, a face, a story, and ultimately a reason to vote in support of suicide prevention and mental health. And again, thank you, Anna, for sharing that. Okay, some final, oh gosh, I'm not ready to do final reminders yet. Legislative meeting demonstration. Did you want to play that, Sam?
Yes, it should be starting very shortly.
Oh, okay. I knew I didn't have access.
Want to make a difference for suicide prevention and mental health? Want to get the attention of your public officials? Want to save lives through advocacy? Here's how. Public officials listen to their constituents, and that's you. Advocating for suicide prevention is easier than you think. So get ready to take action, advocate, and save lives.
When advocating at the state and local level, and sometimes at the federal level too, you may have the opportunity to meet with your public officials. Today, we're meeting with Council Member David Grasso.
Get organized. Have the materials you plan to share ready. You must be on time to your meeting. Early is better. Decide who is leading the meeting before you get there. Practice sharing your story out loud. You might want to do this in front of a mirror or with a trusted friend or family member. Keep your story to 2 to 3 sentences, 30 seconds or less. Decide what you are asking for and how you are going to ask for it. Collect yourself before the meeting. Calm those butterflies, and now you're ready to advocate. Introduce yourself. Thank the council member for meeting with your group.
Council Member, it's great to see you again. Taylor and I are here today representing the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention for our first ever advocacy day here in the district. So thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us.
Well, it's my pleasure.
Ask how much time for this visit.
How much time do we have today?
Thank the council member for previous support, if applicable.
It just means so much to me, both personally and professionally, that you introduced the Youth Suicide Prevention and School Climate Survey Act back in 2016 to require educator training in school policies and suicide prevention. Thank you so much for your leadership, for being a true champion on this issue.
Share your personal story. Ask other group members to briefly share their stories.
I've been with the foundation for about 10 years now, since losing my brother to suicide. He was in high school when he died, so it just means so much to me.
So I'm also a field advocate, and I have a number of family and friends who struggle with their mental health and with finding the necessary resources.
Share the AFSP national and state fact sheets and underscore that suicide is preventable. State there are steps the council member can take to support prevention efforts and share the talking points and legislative needs.
As you can see here, suicide is the 15th leading cause of death in Washington, D.C., the 10th leading cause in the country, but we know it is preventable.
Which brings us to our 2 asks of you today. The first bill would require regular training for health professionals in suicide assessment, treatment, and management.
And the second bill we'd like you to support would address suicide prevention on college and university campuses. We've also included some language for a resolution making September Suicide Prevention Month, if you'd be interested in introducing that this year.
That's great. I really appreciate the advocacy, and obviously I'll look closely at your materials. In fact, I'll be happy to put you in touch with my staff as well to make sure that they have your contact information and you have theirs to work on these bills as well as perhaps introduce the resolution. So thank you.
Request to take a picture with a council member if time. Give folder to the council member, shake hands, and be sure to say thank you for their time. Write down notes from your meeting so you can report back to the AFSP Public Policy Office. So that wasn't so hard, was it? Your AFSP advocacy does make a difference, whether it's on the local, state, or federal level. Start planning your meetings with your public officials now. The AFSP Public Policy Office is here to help you along the way.
All right. Thank you so much for watching that clip with us. For those who have never met with a legislator before, we understand that it might be a little overwhelming and maybe a little bit scary. And that's why we wanted to show you this clip and kind of give you a sample of what these meetings would look like. And again, if you are hesitant about going in to a legislative meeting, let us know and we can help you. We can help you prep and we can help you feel more prepared. Most of you will probably be meeting over a Zoom or over a phone call. That's okay too. But if you meet in person in your districts, again, whether it's virtual or whether it's in person, make sure you keep these key points when you're meeting with them.
Okay. Thanks, Sam. And yeah, you said everything I was about to say. So some final reminders. Complete an electronic legislative meeting feedback form so we know who you met with, what issues were discussed, and if any follow-up is needed. Send a thank you email to the legislative office and tell us what you think about this event overall by completing the event survey. If you have questions, please contact our area director, Sam, who we've been hearing from this evening. And to wrap up this session, we have a few final reminders to share. What we just talked about is the legislative meeting feedback form. The link, it was shared with you over email prior to the event. If you didn't receive the link or are not able to find it, just let us know and we'll get that back out to you. Feedback is important as it lets us know who you met with, what issues were discussed, and if any follow-up is needed by that chapter or by the Public Policy Office. If you received a question during your meeting that you did not know the answer to, the electronic legislative meeting feedback form is where you would share that. After your meeting, as we talked about a minute ago, please send a thank you email to the legislative office and offer the chapter as a resource for suicide prevention and mental health legislation in the future. We can have a sample email template if needed, of course. Please let us know what you thought of this event overall by completing the event survey. We want to make sure the best event possible for each one of our advocates, and your feedback will help us to do that. And finally, if you have any questions or need any support, please reach out to us through the contact information you see here.
Kirsten, thank you so much for summing that up so nicely for us. So I do just want to reiterate, it's all about making connections, right? So it's really, really important that we make these connections, we tell our stories, and we focus on the ask. The ask are in our issue brief. Following this this call, if you signed up to be an advocate, to meet with your legislative leader, I will send you the contact information, and I can also, if it's helpful, I can be on the call with you, and someone from our team can be on the call with you if that adds a little bit extra support. So please make sure you check your email tomorrow morning. You'll have all of this information in your inbox. And again, just on behalf of AFSP and the South Dakota chapter, thank you so much for joining us today. And thank you for really advocating and signing up to be a part of advocacy in South Dakota. we are really working hard to grow our advocacy network, and we're just really, really thankful that you're with us today. Also, as I touched a little bit on in the beginning of our presentation before we officially got started, at AFSP, it's our mission to save lives and bring hope to those affected by suicide. We do a lot of different work across the state of South Dakota. In South Dakota, we're dedicated to prevention education, advocacy, and support for loss survivors. I encourage you to go to afsp.org/South Dakota and sign up for upcoming programs and events and really get involved with our chapter. As well as, I'm going to put a plug, AFSP, we are a voluntary health organization. If you're interested in being involved with us and volunteering, we'd love to have you, as well as if you're not already an advocate, we definitely want you to be an advocate to make sure that you share your story with legislative leaders. And again, just on behalf of AFSP South Dakota chapter, thank you so much for taking the time today to really meet with us, learn more about advocacy, and have these strong discussions. Also, I should also note, of course, you can follow AFSP National on all of these social channels you see here, but you can also follow the South Dakota chapter on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter. All right, I think it's now time. We are going to open it up for questions. So if you have any questions, you can either unmute or put it in the chat. And it's okay to have questions. I have questions all of the time. So if you have any questions, maybe if you're shy, you can certainly put it in chat, or if you're feeling comfortable, you can definitely unmute. I'm also going to put my email address in chat as well. All right, to sum it up, we will make sure you get your email with, again, another copy of the issue brief, a vignette template, so that you can make contact with your legislative leaders. If you need any help, someone from our team would be more than happy to follow up with you, make sure you're feeling comfortable, and we can even join you on those meetings. And for our friends who are participating on Facebook, definitely put your questions in the chat and we'll make sure that we follow up with those as well. So do we have any questions at this time? Okay, I think that concludes our South Dakota State Capitol Day. This version, of course, we have all week. We want to make sure that you make your ask soon so we can make these connections, and then we can have the proper follow-up. So again, make sure you're checking your email with that information, and we'll talk to you soon. Everyone have a great day. And again, thank you so much for joining us today.